The examples of the effects of Force lightning within Star Wars films, comics, and novels are a testament to the brutality of the Force ability. This brutality is best described in the words of Darth Bane within the Book of Sith. The Dark Lord made no attempt to hide the fact that Force lightning in the hands of a worthy Sith practitioner was a weapon, one that was the very embodiment of their rage and wrath, and which could strike at the very heart of their enemy. Sustained use of the ability could therefore cause devastating results, including roasted flesh, calcified bones, and of course, death. Whether it be Darth Malgus' obliteration of Lord Adras, Darth Sidious's destruction of the traitor Gentis, or even Sidious's sustained torturous attack on Luke Skywalker, it's clear that Force lightning could be used to unleash brutal results, seemingly born of the dark side. Therefore, it seems rather obvious why the Jedi Order would forbid its members from using Force lightning, seeing it as an ability made for the Sith and not for the Jedi. However, I'm going to argue that the opposite is true, that it was a mistake and wrong for the Jedi to develop an inflexible and strict rule that forbid the use of Force lightning in every and all instances. To make this argument, we'll point to evidence that shows, like with many Force abilities, there were variants within Force lightning, demonstrating that not all lightning was the same, and not the product of brutality and wrath as previously described. We'll also look at how the ban on all uses of Force lightning was inconsistent with the Jedi's own practices, and why some uses of the ability didn't necessarily breach the codes that forbade it in the first place. So with that, let's look at why the Jedi were wrong to forbid the use of Force lightning in all cases. We'll start by looking at the reason why the Jedi Order banned it according to them. In the Jedi Path, a manual produced by the Jedi Order and intended as a guide for all students undergoing Jedi training, a section entitled Forbidden Force Techniques reveals the Jedi reasoning on why some Force abilities were banned by the Order and why some weren't. Force lightning is included within this forbidden list. Its ban was born out of the drastic changes the Order underwent following the victory of the Republic and Jedi over the Sith in the New Sith Wars, where the Order demilitarized significantly and restructured their own practices and teachings in an era where it was believed the Sith were destroyed. As the Jedi Path makes clear, some abilities when used by the Jedi, particularly those that attempted to meet the rage of the Sith within the war, always ended in tragedy. Therefore, the Order decided to forbid the use of certain Force techniques that they deemed represented the loss of control, prohibiting the use of abilities such as Force lightning from all Jedi Knights. Most importantly, getting back to our point that not all Force lightning was of the same magnitude and degree, the Jedi Order explicitly recognized this within the Jedi Path. They accepted that Force lightning had different variants, and yet they were all treated relatively equally and feared. Certainly, abilities defined as Sith lightning and Force lightning in and of itself were prohibited, but the variant known as Emerald lightning, what I would deem as the lowest and least dark side imbued variant, was also explicitly forbidden here. This is despite the fact that unlike Darth Bane's realization that Force lightning when used by the Sith was the product of the user's wrath, Force lightning when used by the Jedi here was the product of the user's sense of determined justice. In other words, it was something completely different entirely. Therefore, there were two primary reasons why the Jedi Order forbid the use of Force lightning. First, because it was believed that it was marked by a loss of control in the Jedi user, and second, because of its proximity to the clearly dark side variant of Sith lightning. However, the underpinning justification embodied in the proximity reason begins to fall apart when one looks at many of the other Force abilities accepted and even celebrated by the Jedi Order, which are also included within the Jedi Path manual. For example, the Jedi encouraged knights to learn the ability known as Force Injure, despite the fact that it was an ability also used by the Sith to kill without reservation. This was true even though it was fully recognized there was potential for abuse, and it approximated the dark side version of it. This is also true of the ability known as Effect Mine, commonly known as the Jedi Mind Trick. Despite the fact that the ability had the potential to be abused by providing the Jedi user with profit or unacceptable gain, the Order had no problem encouraging Jedi learners to literally override the impulses and thoughts of those less powerful. Again, there were words of warning, but Effect Mine wasn't forbidden simply because there was potential for it to be abused, or draw the Jedi into darker variants of the ability such as mind control, or merely when it didn't serve the greater good. Even more important is the fact that the ability known as Force Storm is a celebrated one under the Jedi Order's accepted advanced Force techniques, where a Jedi could potentially use the Force to literally open a hyperspace wormhole and cause significant shocks to ripple through the very fabric of space. This, of course, could cause tremendous damage and devastation if abused. But even more importantly, unlike Force Lightning being banned due to its proximity to Sith Lightning, Force Storm was recognized by the Jedi as being in and of itself a dark side ability. There wasn't even proximity to the dark side in this case, it was of the dark side. It's hard to even argue that the offensive nature of the ability and potential to maim or cause physical harm is a good justification for the Jedi ban on Force Lightning and Emerald Lightning. The Jedi allowed for its members to utilize their lightsabers to deal killing blows when the situation required it, not hesitating to go so far as decapitation of one's opponent. In the realm of Force abilities, the Jedi Path even encouraged an advanced Force technique called combustion, where the Jedi would use the Force to cause objects to explode with significant intensity, encouraging Jedi Knights to seek out objects made of flammable material so as to be more effective. In other words, the Jedi didn't hesitate to create bombs capable of maiming, injuring, or killing an entire room of enemies if the situation required it. All of this is to say that the Jedi justification that Force Lightning and Emerald Lightning should be banned simply because of the risk that it was close to a darker variant of the ability isn't a very good one. The Jedi encouraged many Force abilities that could be abused, or which were a few steps away from its dark side counterpart. And in some cases, such as with Force Storm, dark side abilities themselves were not always completely forbidden. And when you think about it, every ability had some proximity or closeness to a dark side variant, as even a simple Force Push could evolve into Force Choke. Therefore, it seems as though the loss of control is the key underpinning the complete ban on Force Lightning, and in this case, it could be a stronger argument. Perhaps it's true that Force Lightning is defined by a loss of control, that a Jedi had to risk losing control to produce the ability, which in turn may push them down the path of the dark side. However, we know that this isn't true. It wasn't the case that in every instance, Force Lightning required the loss of control, or even something that came close to the dark side. We know this through the example of a Jedi who used Force Lightning for good. And it wasn't merely some obscure Jedi Knight, but High Council member and Jedi Master Plo Koon, who I would argue is one of the greatest and wisest Jedi in the Order's history. Through the actions of Master Plo, we see the contradiction and falsity in the Jedi Order's ban on Force Lightning in every case and for every member. Looking at the report made by Plo Koon to the Jedi High Council, it's important to note that all of Master Plo's words and conclusions refer to the use of Force Lightning, our middle variant and that closest to Sith Lightning, and not Emerald Lightning. Although Plo Koon would subsequently go on to perfect his unique technique known as Emerald Lightning, also known as Electric Judgment, he hadn't yet reached that point in our upcoming example, using instead that which he fully recognized as Force Lightning, furthering our argument that the Jedi were foolish to not only ban the Emerald Lightning variant, but Force Lightning itself as well. Decades before the Clone War, Plo Koon was in pursuit of a criminal named Dreed Pommel, finding him on the planet of Matelos after tracking him for 5 days. However, as Master Plo went to take the criminal into custody, he discovered that Pommel was ready for him. Even worse, Plo found that Pommel had taken a 5-year-old girl hostage after murdering her parents and 2 siblings, using her as insurance in order to escape to his waiting vessel. Plo Koon was certain he would eventually kill the girl too, and so acting completely on instinct and fully admitting there might have been other options available to him at the time, the Jedi Master raised his arms and unleashed a barrage of Force Lightning at Pommel. It was extremely effective, as striking the criminal with 2 bolts of lightning first succeeded in causing him to release the hostage and his blaster, and then rendered him unconscious until the planet's authorities arrived. The situation was a complete success, with the girl saved and Pommel arrested. And yet, Plo had to confront the strict Jedi ban on all uses of Force Lightning, answering for his actions on Matelos. But it's here, in Master Plo's report to the High Council, where we learn exactly what happens to a Jedi when they use Force Lightning in a way separate from that of the Sith. First, Plo noted he merely learned the ability through his lessons in the Jedi Temple, and never had any interest in Force Lightning or developing it for situations where it might be helpful. In this way, he found the ability to be innate, just as a Jedi would experience innate abilities for precognition and other Force abilities. But more importantly, Plo Koon was clear. His use of Force Lightning did not require him to tap into any amount of anger or fear. In fact, the opposite was true, as Plo was calm and in complete control of his emotions. He merely acted in a way that was most effective, with the thought of dealing a killing blow to Pommel never occurring to him. All of this allowed Plo Koon to easily conclude that not only did he not embrace the dark side when using Force Lightning, he wasn't even close to doing so, and as all Jedi should strive for, his actions were in complete accordance with the will of the Force. Jedi Master Plo Koon would go against the Jedi Order's edicts and experimented with Force lightning for over 2 decades, remaining a warrior of the light and wise member of the Council. This account contradicts the Order's belief exhibited within the Jedi Path, that Force lightning and the Emerald lightning variant were inherently marked by a loss of control. There may certainly be a potential for that, just like in the previous abilities we looked at, but not necessarily and not in all cases. I think this speaks to a misunderstanding by the Jedi of Force lightning, which underpinned their error in banning the ability outright. In the era of the Rule of Two, I believe the Sith Order had a far greater understanding of these questions. As Darth Plagueis would explain to his apprentice Sidious, the variants of Force lightning were completely different and separated to a far greater degree than the Jedi realized. For Plagueis, a Jedi could produce Force lightning, but it wasn't true Sith lightning, that which was a true product of the dark side and the wrath of a Sith Lord. It was really only this version of Force lightning that the Jedi should have forbidden, for as Plagueis described, it was Sith lightning only that required the loss of control through the rejection of compassion and a never-ending thirst for power. In fact, as we learn through the wisdom of Plagueis, a Jedi could never even truly produce this far darker variant. It was only available to the Sith. Therefore, the Jedi were wrong to issue a complete ban on the use of Force lightning, and certainly its lesser variant Emerald lightning, as these abilities didn't require the loss of control or approximate the dark side variant of Sith lightning in the way they believed it did. In the end, as Plo Koon discovered, in conflating all of these variants together, the Jedi Order deprived themselves of a powerful Force ability that was a natural asset to their arsenal, and which was also in accordance with the will of the Force. So there we have it, why the Jedi were wrong to forbid the use of Force lightning by all members of the Order and in all cases. Thank you very much to all of the Patreon members of Star Wars Reading Club, as your support is so greatly appreciated. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, you can find a link to it in the description below, along with all of our social media links and a link to our Star Wars gaming channel. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions. Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. If not for me, for wisdom.